for anyone who was not able to make it today. So thank you for coming to the meeting. And some of the things we're going to talk about today are ways that you can see your students' progress in Brightspace, but also ways that you can automate communication with your students in cases where they have done something great that you want to thank them for, or forgotten to do something that they needed to do, or maybe situations where they haven't scored at the level you'd prefer, and you would like to encourage them to retake something or resubmit something. So there are a number of processes we can automate in Brightspace where it will look through your class list and find which students have met certain criteria and then send communication to those students automatically once you've set up these agents. And so the first thing we're going to look at today, and there are, for people who came later, there are in the chat of this meeting 2 handouts, and they do cover the topics that we are looking at today. So one of the topics is the intelligent agents, and they are under this More Options button within one of your classes. So we would just click on Intelligent Agents, and we'll come to this page right here.
David, are you trying to share? Because I don't see anything.
I am not sharing right now, and so I will fix that. Let's see here. All right, that should be better. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Okay, so right up here we have More Options, and then we have Intelligent Agents. And so this brings us to the Intelligent Agents page. At this point, we have no agents in this class, so the only option we have is to create a new one. But once you have created agents, you will have some additional things you can do to manage your list. So we're going to create a new agent. We need to give it a title. We can give a description if we want to remind ourselves what this was for. This might be good, especially if you're going to use a lot of these, because the list could get, pretty long. You can categorize these if you want. So if you're going to use a lot of agents and you want to organize them for yourself, you can do that. It is not required. What is required once you want this to actually work is to check the box that this is enabled. And if you want to turn the agent off without deleting it, you could always uncheck this box and save, and it would turn it off, but it wouldn't delete your work. You would still have this available to you if you wanted to go back and turn this on later. So next, we're going to come down to the Scheduling tab. We can choose how often it will run this process. So basically, we're going to teach it something we want it to do, and we could run it just one time at the beginning of the semester. We could, if we really wanted to, run it every hour, although I probably wouldn't unless it's something that really needs to be run every hour, because it's going to send the students a lot of messages if you do that. You could choose daily, weekly, monthly, or even once a year. So in this case, we're going to choose weekly, and we're going to repeat every week, so every 1 week. And I'm going to send this on a Friday. You see that I can choose what day I want it to send on. So whenever it makes the most sense for you. So for example, if you had everything due on Friday, maybe you would send it on Saturday or on Monday or whatever made the most sense for your class. We can choose a time if we want, if we always want this to show up at a specific time. And if we want to, we can pick a range of dates. So we could turn this off at a certain point, which you might want. For example, if we tell it every week, email every student who hasn't logged into class, then it might be a pretty good idea to have an end date so that once they no longer are supposed to be logging into class, it quits, bugging them about that. So we have these 2 dates here, and we'll go ahead and pick maybe that. And then the next thing we can do is choose some criteria. So I can choose either every user who exists in my class list, or I can choose specific roles. For most instructors, every user visible in the class list is probably the same as everyone with the role of students, but it might not be the case. You might have other faculty enrolled in your course or other people who can see your course, but you don't want to bother them with a bunch of emails. And so that might be a situation where you'd want to choose these specific roles instead of choosing all users. You might want students, student incomplete, and manual enroll student so that you've covered all your different students. And then this wouldn't send emails to faculty or, adjuncts or anyone who's in your course, like in an observational sense. And then I can choose what type of action I want it to take action upon. Do I want it to talk to my students when they don't log in, when they haven't accessed the course, or upon some sort of third condition that I create from this menu we'll look at in just a minute? So you can choose what type of thing the system is looking for. Maybe you want to find out, in this case, who has not accessed the course in the past week. So I could tell it the user has not logged in the last 7 days to my specific course. And maybe I also want to know if they haven't logged into Brightspace at all in the past week. And so I could choose either one or both of these. And it will look through the class list once a week on that day and time I chose. And anytime a student meets these criteria, it will send them the email that we're about to create later on in this process. I can also choose additional things for it to look for. So I could click right here where it says create, and I can create a release condition from anything that is on this list. So for example, a student submits an assignment, and I could send them an email automatically thanking them for having turned in the assignment. Or I could automatically send them an email as soon as I've graded their assignment so that they know they've received a grade. I could automatically email every student who forgot to turn in the assignment and remind them that they have to turn it in. And the same for any of these other things. So for example, I could tell them if there's a really important class video that I want them to watch, I could have it look and see which students have not clicked that video, and then it would email every student who hasn't watched my lecture, and it would tell them they need to watch this before the exam, or whatever I tell it to tell them. I can do this with discussions. I can do this if they have grades that I want it to monitor. Maybe their quiz score is below a certain amount and I want them to retake the quiz. I could choose score on a quiz, and then I could send them a message that they're expected to retake the quiz, but within 3 days or whatever, to score a higher grade. So I have a number of things that it can automatically search for in the system. And then once it finds that a student meets the criteria, it will send them the email that we're about to create in just a minute. Before we go any further, I'd like to see if there's any questions, because we've talked about a lot of different buttons, and see if anyone wants to go back over something or has questions about the options that are available.
David, did you say there was a handout in the chat?
There is. In the chat for this meeting, there should be 2 handouts at the bottom. If you don't see them, we're also going to put them on our website. And I can email them to you later as well if you don't see them in the chat, but they should be right at the bottom of the meeting chat.
I don't see them. Maybe I might be the only one though.
Okay, I can send them to you later. Are there any other questions? Okay, so in this case, what we're going to look for is, since this is a study of who has not attended, maybe we're interested in who has not, let's see here, who has not visited the class recently. So let's take a look at who has not visited a content topic. And maybe I want to see if they have not looked at the syllabus yet. So I'm looking to see, have they never logged into my class? Have they never looked at my syllabus? And then I can go ahead and click Create. You are not limited to one release condition. So if I want to, I can come back in here and create a second condition as well. So I could also tell it that I want to see if they have looked at the Get to Know Your Instructor or the maybe I also want to see if they know how to succeed in the course. So I can create these three conditions in addition to these login conditions it's looking for. And once it finds somebody who, in this case, meets all the conditions, it will email them. Or I can choose any. So it will look for someone who's failed to meet any one of these conditions and email them, which is what I want in this case. So you can choose either option. And then the last thing I can choose here is the action. Do I want to take action only the first time the agent's criteria are satisfied, which in this case I do? Or do I want it to email every time? And you might want that, for example, if you made an intelligent agent about low quiz scores, you might want to choose every time they get a low quiz score, it sends them an email telling them that they need to retake the quiz. I do not want to mess with enrollments, so I'm going to leave that alone. But I do want to send my students an email. And it tells me here what email address this is going to come from. It's going to come from noreply@celticonline.brightspace.com, which is helpful because it tells the students that they can't reply to this email. It's not an active email address. Caroline, I think in this case, I chose, oh, you're right. I chose visits these things. So in this case, I might want to change that and set it up where they haven't visited. So let's see what options we have here. Yeah, not completed content topic. So I might want to edit these, which I can do by simply getting rid of those and creating one that is not completed content topic. Then maybe it's the syllabus and maybe I also want to see if they have looked at that. So the difference between visited and completed would be what action they took. Visited means they clicked on it at some point. So if they have visited everything, they have clicked on everything. In some cases, there may be things they have to complete, like assignments, quizzes, things like that, where they would have to submit something. And so in that case, you might want completed instead of just visited. It really depends on what you're tracking. If you just want to see if they looked at your PowerPoint, then visited and completed are probably basically the same. But if you want to see, did they turn in their assignment or did they do something that required some type of completion, then that's where it might start to make a difference which option you pick. All right, so down here, we're going to go ahead and send an email. And so the first thing I see right here is that I have these blue reminders here where it will give me more information. So for example, I have special email addresses I can use, and I don't have to memorize what these are because anytime I'm in here, I can just click this blue link and it will tell me what options I have. In this case, I want to send my email to the initiating user. These little brackets you see right here around the word initiating user are what make this a string. So what the computer will do is if it sees the initiating user within these two brackets, it will plug the student's email address into these brackets and send it to the right person. So initiating user is the student who is getting this communication. The initiating user auditor is the advisor of the student who is getting this notification. And we'll look at how that works later. But in this case, we're going to use the initiating user. So I'm going to put that in right here. And then I'm going to give it a subject. And I can use strings in the subject and the message as well. So in this case, I didn't put it into the subject. But if I want to, I can also put anything from this list of strings into either the subject of the message or the body of the message. So for example, if I want to put the first name of the student into my email, I could come right here into my title, my subject, and I could just paste this string. And now when it sends this email, it will be welcome to class, and then the student's first name. And it will just plug that in for me automatically. And just like with the other list of strings, I don't have to know what these are or memorize them. I have a list here from which I can just choose what I want. The only thing I need to be careful of when I am copy pasting is that I need to include these brackets because they're very important. And I don't want anything extra outside of the brackets. I just want the brackets and the words inside, because those brackets are what tell the computer that this is code and not just text. So I can come right here into my email. I could type hi, and then the student's name. And then I could type in here, whatever I want to tell them. And so I could type up whatever I want the text of my email to be. I can include any number of these strings that I want. So if there's other stuff that I want to include, I can. For example, I could put in the last date they logged in and it would look up the date for me. I could use the full name of the student if I wanted, or the username of the student if I wanted to. If I didn't want to use their actual name, I could use their last name and their first name. So I have a whole bunch of different options that it can plug in for me to personalize the email. In this case, we're just going to use, last name doesn't make sense. I should put the first name there. So we'll switch that. We'll use first name. All right, so now it's going to send a message that says hi and the student's first name. It will include this text that I've put here. And anything else that I want to add. I can add some attachments if I wanted to, so I could include my syllabus if I wanted to, or anything else that I wanted to include. And then it's going to let me choose what format I want for my message. You probably want HTML, especially if you were using these strings, because the strings are an HTML code. And so you would want to, in that case, to make sure you're sending an HTML message. If you only had text and no strings, you could choose text if you really wanted to. But I wouldn't unless you have students who just can't receive, formatted messages. And at this point, I can simply save and close my work. And you see now I have my agent listed right here. It tells me what the next date is that this will run in this course. It is an active agent, and I can see that here. And once it has run at least once, I will see the results and also the date. If I want to edit it, I have this arrow here and I can edit it. I can force it to run right now if I would like to. I can delete it. And I can also look at a history of every time this has run and what has happened. I can also copy it. So if I wanted to create two agents that are very similar, I could copy what I've done and then duplicate it and make some changes. Renee, you had a question?
I think someone else had their hand up before.
Okay, Kathy.
How do the students' names populate within those brackets?
So this string that we added, because of those little brackets that are around it, this is code for the computer. So this string that I took off of the list of strings right here that we can choose from, the computer treats this as code. So when I tell it initiating user first name, it will look at which student is it about to send the email to. It will look up what first name is in the system for that student, and it will replace the text of that string with the student's name. So it has to be something that's on this list. Those are the only codes that it knows how to replace in this way. But if it is something on this list and you include those brackets, then it knows that what you want it to do is not to send the text initiating user first name, but instead to look up what that first name is and plug that in instead. It just makes it more personalized.
If you're in a specific class, you have a group of students, does it bring up, like, how does it know which student?
So
It's for
that
students who meet the criteria.
exactly.
that you
It
just
all
set up.
depends
Oh,
upon
I
the
understand.
choices that you picked up here. So the first thing that matters, where did it go? Right here, under criteria. The first thing that matters is this list of roles where we chose the roles. So it matters what roles you allowed it to send to. For example, in this case, it is not allowed to send to faculty. So if another faculty member was in your course, but, you know, like in an observational way, or maybe you were co-teaching with someone, it will not bother them about this particular thing. It will only look for students or whatever categories of people you've asked it to look for. And then the next thing, I told it to take action upon login activity. I told it that I wanted it to know who had not logged in, either to the system or to the course. That's not required. You don't have to use login activity as a requirement, but it is an option. And the last thing here, I do think it's a good option, because if the student has not logged in, then that is probably the biggest issue for that student in the course. You know, if they're not logging in, that's a problem. But I can also choose either additionally or in place of, I can choose any criteria off of these lists that I want with this create button. And then I can choose whether I want it to have to check every box or just any box. In this case, I chose any. So once a week on the date I told it to, it's going to run its software and it's going to see what students meet David's criteria. And it's going to come up with a list of who those students are. And then it's going to take the action I told it to take, which is to send this email to those students. And that's how it's going to know which students to plug in here. So if, you know, a specific student, if Caroline did not turn in her assignment or did not do whatever criteria I put in, it will say, welcome to class, Caroline, or whatever I tell it to say. And it will say, hi, Caroline, our records show blank, and then it will just send the email that I told it to send. Because it already knows that she's the one who met its criteria. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Renee, it looks like you're next.
Yeah, whenever you were on that screen that showed results, it showed the grid of what happens after you send the agent.
Right. So on this page here, Results will give you a
Right.
quick summary of what happened.
So
if
what
you
does
have a-
that mean? What happened? Does it mean that it will say that the student logged in or the student addressed
Let-
the issue, or does it just say we sent the agent?
I'm just checking real fast to see who's in here, and then we can go ahead and run this one. And Alexis and Caroline and Luke may suddenly be bothered by some emails. But you can see from this gear, this is running right now.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, we can take a look at what it chooses to do. This gear means that it's in progress. Brightspace does not treat this as like a priority action. So if the system is very busy, this could take a few minutes to run, even though you chose run now, because it considers this like a background process, something that's not urgent. So it is running it, and whenever it's done, it will tell us so. And then at that point, we would see our results of the run here, and we would see the date that it last ran here as well, and also the date it's scheduled to run again. But under this view history, once I've run it multiple times, this is where I could see a full list of every time it's run. And under the export history, if you really need a record to prove that you sent this out, you could also export the history to Excel, and then you could save a history for yourself of all of these processes. So if there was something where it was really important to have a record, that's something you could do. And you see it is still running, so it's not going to be lightning fast. This is meant to be sort of a background thing when it gets around to it.
Clara has a good question in the chat too.
Okay, sure. Let's say I want to set up an agent to tell me if my students.
I can like explain it if you want me to.
Sure.
If it's easier for me to just explain my question. So let's say I have 10 topics within a module. And it looks to me like when I'm trying to set this up, like let's say I want an email sent to me to alert me that Susie Smith hasn't visited 2 of the topics within module 1, right? So it looks to me like the only way I can set that up is to set up that release condition like you're doing right now, but do it 10 separate times. Is there a quicker way to do that or no?
Under intelligent agents, no. There is another tool we're about to look at that might be a better way for you as the instructor to monitor what students are doing.
Okay.
This tool is it can be used for what you're describing, but this tool is probably better for notifying students of things. It's probably better for pushing information out rather than as a way to track from the instructors and what students are doing their work.
Okay, I'll look forward to the next tool you talk about then. Thanks.
For Renee's question, you do see that it did finish running. It tells us when, and it does show that it identified a user. So it looks like this student, Tyler student, did receive an email. And I don't know which email address this is going to. Oh, it goes to one that isn't real. So Tyler's not actually going to see this email because he's not a real person. But if he was, then it would show, an actual email address here. You can see what it sent him. So you see it replaced that first string that we imported with the name Tyler. And it says, "Hi, Tyler." And then it has the text of the email. And in the case of your students, since they are real people, they would have real email addresses and they would receive this in real life. So for Clara's question, let's take a look at the next tool that we're talking about, unless there were any other questions about the intelligent agents.
Sorry, can you just one more time? Where do you access that history? So you went to more options and it's
Right.
just under the agent list. Okay.
Right.
Got it.
So that's
All
it right
thanks.
here. And then you'll
Yeah.
have a list of all the ones you've created.
Yeah.
And they'll
Okay.
each have an arrow to with the commands, just like any other tool within the system.
Yeah.
And if you decide to use a lot of these, you might create categories and organize them a little. It just depends on how much of this you decide to do. So the next tool is this class progress. And this is probably a better way to see what Clara is talking about. Because under here, I can see specifically a student. And on this dashboard level, if I had lots of students, I would see a list here. On this dashboard level, I can get a quick glance of what the student has been up to, including what content he has completed. In this case, he's done nothing, which is bad. He has logged in 6 times, but I can see he has looked at nothing at all in my course, even though he did take a quiz. And so normally this would not be desirable, behavior. So I might click on his name and see exactly what the student has been up to. And in this case, I can see a list of every topic the student has visited, which in this case is none. What discussions and assignments the student has done, what quizzes the student has done, the absences. The student has had a lot of absences, 477 days. And so there I can see some data on this student. So on that first page, I can see a very high level data of, which students have been doing a lot and which ones have not. And then I can click on the student's name and see much more specific data on each individual student. And I think this is probably the most efficient way that it offers us to see the type of information in a class level that Clara was talking about, because this is probably the clearest data that is offered to us for that. Yes, Beth?
So I'm going to piggyback on Claire's, but so I have been using this, but that means if I want to know if they've done chapter 1, item 12, does that mean I have to click on every single student and go into their thing?
No, because another thing I can do, let's take a look at a specific thing. Like maybe I have, I don't know if I have any assignments in this course. Oh, I do. I can click on an assignment itself, and I can take a look specifically at what the activity has been on this assignment, or what the activity has been on a specific quiz. And so that might be, in this case, a more detailed way of seeing exactly what's been happening with a specific item. For example, I might, let's edit, I don't want that. But I might want to come in here to my quiz, and I might want to look at the attempt logs and see exactly who has attempted my quiz and who has not. And then I could see a list here of everyone who has or hasn't attempted this specific thing. Yes, Clara?
All right, so if I did want some kind of report, so let's say I don't want to just go into Celtic Online every day and be monitoring, then would I need an intelligent agent then to send me those emails?
Not
Like if I want to be
necessarily.
alerted.
Not necessarily, because here under assignments, if we create a new assignment, another option you have, let's see, where did it go? Yeah, right here. So under your edit menu for assignments, and we are under submission and completion, you do have the ability to be notified every time an assignment is turned in, which might be especially helpful, for example, if you had a student who was late or had an incomplete, or a course that only has a couple of students in it. It will email you every time somebody has turned this in, and then you would get a notification to your email about that. There's not something like this where you would necessarily get a notification every time, like a student views a PowerPoint or something like that. But for major things like this, you can be notified through this menu if you would like to.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, so that seems to be tied to an assignment, and it has to be, if they submit it, I would get a notification, but if they don't submit it, I don't. So I guess if I'm understanding that correctly, what I want to do, actually, I do need to set up an intelligent agent. So here's my issue. I have students who never visit anything in my class, and somehow they're still submitting assignments. And so it's really more a way for me to kind of track what is going on. And I don't want to have to manually do this because I don't have time. And so I would like to set up some way for me to be notified if someone isn't visiting the topics within a module, then I'll know something's up and then I can go look. So it's really for me to, I don't need to know if they're looking at it because that's the hope. I need to know if they're not looking at it. And then I could, go reach out to them and see what's going on. So that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. One thing you might consider, Schoology had this as well, but I think this tool's a little bit better. And to get to this, what I did is I clicked in my folder this add dates and restrictions. And I do have the ability to set up release conditions or a learning path in my folders. So if I wanted to, I could set it up where until they have done a specific thing in this folder, they can't progress on to my quiz or my assignment or whatnot. And the menu looks very similar to the intelligent agents. It's a similar list of options, but I can set it up where it would automate it for me. Not so much in an email, but where it would simply block them from doing the next thing. So for example, maybe they haven't visited all content topics, then it wouldn't let them move on. Or maybe I just want them to release one thing, like maybe I just want to make sure that they have viewed, a specific topic like my video. And in that case, I could block them from moving on until they have done that. It would need to be communicated to students because they would need to know why they're being blocked. Like they would need to know that the course is set up this way and that they can't just skip ahead to the assignment and do it without going through the content. But this might be something that would be easier for the instructor than tracking it individually or, getting an email from an intelligent agent every time a student does this. So that's just something else to consider if you're interested in that. I think it's a little bit better tool than the one we had before. So people who've given up on it in the past due to the Schoology one not working well, it might be something to try again and just see if that helps you with that problem. Are there any other questions before we go on? Okay, I want to look at one other tool. Not everyone at Carlow who is faculty will see this tool. You will only see this next tool if you are an advisor. However, if you are an advisor, this is the home page that you see when you first log into the system. And it's buried down here under your course list, but there's this widget right here called Audit Users. And it's just on your home page right under your courses. So I'm going to click on this. In my case, I only have one user, which is this Tyler student. But if you are an advisor, you probably have a much longer list. So you could certainly choose how many people you want to display per page to make sure everyone's included. And then this tool works exactly the same as the one within your courses, where you can see the progress of this student. So this is not so much about generating a report. It's more a tool for if you have a student you're concerned about or someone who's in your office, not sure of why they're doing so poorly, or maybe they've otherwise come to your attention, or you have various reasons to focus in on this student. We can see specifically every class this student is in, and we can see specifically what they have done in these particular courses. So I can see what grades this person has, what feedback they got, what content they have or haven't visited, and I can toggle through any course I want and see specifically what the student has been doing in each of those courses. And so this might give me information about that student where I could see, you know, is this an issue where the student's doing poorly because they're not going to class, they're not logging in, they're not viewing anything. Maybe they're doing what Clara mentioned and just doing the assignments without learning any of the content first. And then I could talk to that student about why that's a bad idea. But I might also see that a student has conscientiously done everything and is still just scoring horribly. And that might tell me something too. It might tell me that this is a student who really needs, you know, to go to the CAA, or they need some additional support, or they have, you know, some sort of larger issue that isn't just due to doing the work. And so this audit users tool is available to anyone who is an advisor, and it should show a complete list of your advisees. If it does not, then please email me and we can make corrections to it if necessary. Are there any questions about this tool? Okay. Are there any questions about something else that we didn't cover, or that you want more information about, or that wasn't clear?
David, just to go back one more time to Claire's question. So I could set up that intelligent agent and just not send the email, and it would give me that history report. I click on it and I could see it.
Yeah, you
Okay,
could do
so
that.
as long as I don't do the email part of it, it'll actually generate me a list.
Yeah, you would have that list and you could export it to Excel. The issue that Clara pointed out, and I don't see a way around it, is that it is kind of focused in on specific content and not content generally. Like, I don't see an option where you can choose modules. So it would be tedious from the instructor's perspective. But yeah, you could get a report in that manner.
What do you mean by not? I thought you could narrow it down into specific part of the content in your.
You can, but I think Clara was saying that she would be more interested in not having to duplicate it for like each individual content item. And maybe I was missing something, but I didn't see where it allowed me to choose. Oh, it does actually. So I was wrong. What I told Clara was incorrect. It does seem like it lets me choose the whole module.
I actually tried that and didn't work, but
It didn't work.
yeah, why don't you see if it works for you? Because I tried that, it didn't work for me.
Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, you're right. It won't let me do that. Okay. So that is not an option, even though it's listed there. It does look like I have to pick something specific in that folder. So that's interesting. So I think that's the shortcoming for the method that Clara was talking about, is that would get pretty tedious to do that for every folder. And that is why maybe some of those other tools might make it a bit easier. Because, for example, here with these restrictions, I do have a bit more flexibility about what I want it to do. Another thing to look at, which is not related to data, unless we have any other questions to take a quick look at. Okay, so this is not related to what we've been talking about, but it is a new tool that I just wanted to point out to people in case you were interested in it, which is that we have brought 2 of the library databases into Brightspace directly. And the advantage of adding things this way, like an article or a video to your course, is that it bypasses the issue of the student clicking the article and having to log in if they're off campus, because it's using the Brightspace login to push them straight into the article. So right here, they're in 2 different spots because all of these vendors have their own ideas of where to put the buttons. So unfortunately, they are not standardized. The companies just choose whatever they want when they write the software. The first one is under existing activities. And it's the EBSCO link right here. Oh, hold on, I'm in incognito mode. So let me get into a real browser window and see if that will be better, because it will not allow me to be in incognito mode. So give me just 1 second and we will log in correctly and then it will work. You probably won't have that problem because you're probably not logging into multiple accounts. Okay, so we will go back to the existing activities right here, and we will click on EBSCO, and it will take a minute to load. And now you can see the databases list just like you would see it on the university website. And so I can pick any of these databases that I want to search, anything that is from EBSCO. In this case, I want to use this Education Research Complete. So I'm going to check that, and then I'm going to click on Continue. And then I get the same search menu that you are familiar with. I can just type in a search term. That should bring up some searches. That should be a lot of searches. Yep, here we go. And then I can choose any article off of this list that I want. Obviously, just like the regular database, some things we have full text for and some things we don't. So that will be the same journals that we would have on the regular database. But I can choose something that I want to add to my course. Maybe I want this one, and I see that it does have full text. So I'm just going to click Add. And now right down here, I can see that this article, the abstract, is listed right here. And if students click it, it will load the entire EBSCO record page right here into my course. They can get the full text or any other options that are enabled for that particular journal. And as you see, I didn't have to have the student log in because it's using Brightspace to log them in. So that's really, it really clears up one of the major issues that happened when we put like a permalink in a course before. If you are sharing articles with students, this is a great way to do that. Are there any questions about the EBSCO tool before I show you the other one that you might want to see? Okay, the other one that you might want to look at is completely different. It's under this More Stuff button. So if we go to create a file, you can also do create an assignment, create a quiz, create a discussion, anything that gives you the create window and this insert stuff button. The insert stuff button is the key. And then I can scroll down here. I have two journals that I can, or two databases I can choose from, but the one you're most likely to be looking for that we'll look at here is this Alexander Street video. And if you are interested in adding any of their videos to your course, you can do that right through this box right here in under the insert stuff. And I can just choose the size I want. I'm going to choose medium. And maybe I want this video about learning objectives. I can see that there's a preview here. I just click insert. I click save. Oh, I have to give a title. Save and close. And now this video is embedded into my course. And there's no need for an external login or for the student to type in a password because it's using Brightspace and their user account in Brightspace to log them into Alexander Street. And so that's a big advantage compared to using this previously because, you know, it gets around that whole login issue, especially if students aren't on campus. There is also the Sage one. If you want to use this one, I would recommend reaching out to us. This one is not as user-friendly, but if you do use Sage, it is here as well. This one, though, has a whole bunch of boxes you have to remember to check. And it won't let you progress forward unless you pick various things. So if you are going to use this Sage one, I would maybe just schedule a meeting and take a look at it, because this one is not as user-friendly. Oh, I didn't spell right. Let's see, where's my search? Yeah, I should spell the word correctly. So this one is also here and will also work. It's just a bit more cumbersome for the instructor. So if you want to use Sage, I would just reach out and talk to us, and we can walk you through how to get that one set up properly. This EBSCO one, however, is really easy to use, and this one is probably the largest list of journals and databases anyway. So this will be helpful in a lot of situations. Are there any questions about these databases or about any of the other tools today, or just about anything related to Brightspace? And the key with this Sage is just you have to follow every step or it just doesn't work. Okay, so it did find some resources this time. Maybe I want this one, I'll add it to my list. And then I can go to my list. And now that I have this on my list, I can add this to the course. And I can click import to LMS, and it will put it in just like with the EBSCO one. It is just a bit of a more complicated way to make the tool work. And again, this is all just up to whatever the database vendor chose to do when they wrote the code. Brightspace doesn't control this. They just tell them what the parameters are. So whatever that particular publisher decided was the right way to create the software is how it is set up. So this one does work. You can see that the content is here, and it did log me into it. And it's still fairly user-friendly for the student, where they get this text box here that's easy to read through. It's just not as user-friendly for me as the instructor, because I have, a few steps to follow. But this one is also available to you if you're interested in it. Are there any questions about these, or about the data that we looked at, or about anything else with these topics? I know we're running pretty close to the end of our time. Oh, and Allison says ProQuest does not have this yet, but it is in the company's roadmap. So we'll definitely get that added once ProQuest gets that done. And then that will be available to you as well. Are there any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well, if there are questions, we can definitely take a look at those or add more information about anything you have questions about. And if there are not, then thank you for coming to our session. We do have handouts about these database tools as well, and I will post those to the CTRL website. And if you have questions about anything else, oh yeah, Allison just shared a link to the website. And so if you have questions about anything else, just let us know. Or if you have questions right now, then we'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.